For the next 13 hours I'm flying with Finnair in what many consider to be the world's most comfortable business class seat to put it to a true test on one of Finnair's longest routes from Bangkok to Helsinki. But that's not all. Once we land we'll get to experience the luxury of Finnair's Platinum Lounge, complete with a free-to-use sauna inside the airport before trying out the Finnair short-haul business class experience. How will a seat that doesn't recline fare over such a long flight? And how does Finnair's service and dining compare to other top international business class products? And how did I book both of these flights for a total cash spend of less than £40? Let's get going and find out. Our day started nice and early with a 6 AM arrival at the airport. We stayed in a nearby airport hotel the night before, so it was just a short walk over for us. Unfortunately, didn't get the best of sleeps in the airport hotel. There was an adjoining room with a couple that were being pretty loud, shouting and vomiting, so we did try and have a bit of a lie-in before making it over to the airport, and left it about as late as we felt comfortable doing. Thankfully though, the priority check-in was a breeze and we made it through fast-track security in no time at all and gave us an hour to spare to grab some breakfast and coffee in the lounge. Although we're flying in business class today, because of my Oneworld status, we were invited to use the Miracle First Class Lounge. However, we decided instead to head to the Qatar Lounge as the Miracle Lounge didn't seem like anything too special from a quick bit of online research. I'll not show too much of the lounge as Qatar are not the focus of this video, and once we land in Helsinki we'll have quite a long connection to explore the Finnair Lounge there. But the Qatar space was a really nice place to relax, especially after the Qatar flight left. It was really quiet with not many people in there, and we were able to get a nice breakfast and a coffee to start off the day. By the time we finished our breakfast it was pretty much time to board, so we made our way over to the boarding gate. By the time we arrived they'd already started the boarding process. At least that's what we thought. We did of course then have to go wait in a separate room before they finally let us on the plane. Our ride today is an Airbus A350 with a 1-2-1 configuration in business class using Finnair's latest Airlounge seat. And this revolutionary new seat with no recline is now fitted on all of their long-haul flights. Waiting on my seat were a couple of pillows, and in the foot cubby there was the bedding. And we'll have a proper look at all of that once we're in the sky. And on the table to the left there was today's menu, my earphones, and the most basic amenity kit you'll ever see in business class. There's good storage at the seat with this section compartment, and then another smaller cupboard over your left shoulder. This one has a space to hang the earphones. It's also got the earphone connector port, as well as a USB-C charging port. You also have a remote for the in-flight entertainment here, but to be honest the touchscreen is really responsive. Underneath the side table there's a small number of limited controls, things like the do not disturb and the lights. And there are a lot of really good options for charging devices at this seat. There's the wireless charging pad on the side table, there's USB and USB-C charging ports within the cupboard, and then down by your feet there's also a universal power outlet. For personal lighting there's a small reading light over your shoulder, and there's also individual lights above the seat. No individual air vents though. The tray table pops out from here. It's a relatively small size, but it's very manoeuvrable, very easy to slide away if you want to get out, and it's sturdy enough, and a big enough size for the lighter meals that Finnair serve. For a pre-departure drink I was served Finnair's famous blueberry juice, which is absolutely delicious. There was champagne on offer, but it was a bit early for me today, especially as I'd gone a bit heavy with the boozing on a Cathay Pacific trip the day before. Finnair have a decent selection of both alcoholic and soft drinks, and the food menu was looking pretty good as well. We were going to be starting the day with breakfast, which is never particularly exciting on a plane, but my expectations for food quality were pretty high. I'd had really good food on a previous Finnair trip, so I was hoping that today's flight would be more of the same. We'll find out if it hits the mark once we're up in the air and the onboard service starts. But for now our departure was slightly delayed, so I just took the opportunity to look around the seat a bit more. There's plenty of leg room, with a really long foot cubby, and although there's no door you get a ton of privacy in this thanks to the high walls on it. And I also took a look at the amenity kit, or travel kit as Finnair calls it. And as I said before, this is about as basic as it comes for business class, probably more akin to what you'd see in premium economy on most airlines. Just an eye mask, dental kit and earplugs are provided. However, lip balm, a shaving kit and a few other little bits and pieces are available on request. It's done in the name of sustainability, but it does feel a bit like cost cutting. Previous Finnair flights I've been on have also provided slippers as standard, but these weren't available on this flight. And I do think that missing out on things like this, as well as not having basic amenities like moisturiser, just cheapens the experience a little bit. But one thing that definitely doesn't feel cheap is the in-flight entertainment screen. These are really high quality, one of the most responsive touchscreens I've had on a plane. It also has lots of really helpful information available, like a timeline of the flight and when the meals will be provided. There's a great selection of films and TV shows. It gives information about how to use the seat, how to connect to the Wi-Fi, connections at your next airport. You can also get multiple camera views from outside the plane, and I do really like the in-flight map that Finnair use as well. And as the sun continued to rise outside, we were still waiting for our takeoff slot, so I decided to go check out the bathrooms. Nothing too interesting in terms of amenities other than some nice soap. The most interesting factor is that because it's an A350 there is a window in here, but I thought it was best to leave that closed whilst we were on the ground still. Thankfully, not long after I got back to the seat, we were finally able to push back, so it's time to get those seatbelts on, and the safety demo soon played.
To our crew and on you, we are here to ensure your safety on board. It's essential that you always...
And as we make our way up to the runway and take off for this flight, let me just talk a bit about how we were able to get this flight for so cheap. Now, when I looked at the cash price of this flight, going all the way from Bangkok to London via Helsinki, it was actually surprisingly reasonable. I would have thought a flight of that distance would be thousands and thousands of pounds in business class, but because it's an indirect flight, that's seen as less desirable, so although you are getting more time in the air, and it might intuitively seem like that would be more expensive, Finnair obviously wants to try and attract people who might otherwise have looked for a more expensive, direct business class flight to instead fly with them, so the actual cash price was only just under £1,500. That's obviously not cheap, but for a one-way business class flight of that length, that did seem pretty reasonable to me. And Finnair cash fares to and from Asia, they do seem generally pretty reasonable, especially compared to other competitors. But since this was part of a 3-month trip, we were trying to keep our cash costs as low as possible, and we did have plenty of Avios to use, and that's what we used for this flight. And for the 2 flights today, going from Bangkok to Helsinki and then on to London, it was 80,500 Avios each, plus £39.60 in taxes and charges. So ultimately we paid very little for this trip, but I will keep that cash cost in mind as I go on this journey, because I do think the cash cost of these flights is important to keep in mind when considering if it's worth it or not. So let's get up in the sky and see what the onboard service is like. The best thing about the Finnair Business Class experience by far is the amount of space and comfort that you get with these seats. And whilst there's no mechanical recline to the seat, you can still make it go lie flat. The one mechanical element of the seat is this leg rest that comes up. That's controlled by a button to the side of the seat, and then this gap is filled in by using this lever here. But I did notice around the cabin it did seem a lot of people didn't really know how to do this. There were a lot of people who were lying down who seemed to have that gap there. But I love how you can sit upright in this seat and still have your legs fully up. It's a similar feeling to sitting up in a bed or sitting on a sofa. I tried out the provided earphones, which were comfortable, and they do a decent job of reducing cabin noise. And as I settled into watching some of the in-flight entertainment, the meal service started. Hot towels were handed out, which was followed up with a smoothie, and then my breakfast arrived. It all comes on one tray. You'll see there's a gap there. That's because they initially brought me out the wrong option and then went away to get that. I went for a frittata, which was okay. Neither of the breakfast options were super appealing to me. On a previous flight with Finnair, I've had one of the best breakfasts I've ever had on a plane, but this one was a bit disappointing to be honest. I was able to at least get a decent cappuccino, and the fresh fruit was also greatly appreciated. And once I was done, the crew very quickly cleared away the tray table, and then they kind of disappeared for a while. The timeline of the flight had this down as nap time, but given it was a morning flight that was going to be arriving in Helsinki in the evening, a lot of us in the cabin were just trying to stay awake for the full flight. But to grab a drink or a snack during this time, you did have to proactively seek out the crew in the galley or hit the call button. There wasn't really any proactive service. But I was able to just sit back, relax, have a drink, have a snack. They had the whole series of The Penguin on the in-flight entertainment, so I decided I was going to try and watch the entire thing on this journey. Although unfortunately the technology had other ideas, which I'll come on to a bit later. After a couple of hours and a few episodes of Penguin, I did decide to give the bed a go. I figured it probably wouldn't hurt me too much to have a little nap. And I do really rate the provided bedding with Finnair. There's a really good mattress that's really nicely fitted to the seat. It doesn't quite look like it on here, but the foot cubby is really long and spacious, and the bed itself is a wide space, so you do feel like you've got plenty of room. There's 2 pillows provided as well, a smaller one and a slightly bigger one. And for me, this is the most comfortable business class bed that I've experienced. I only managed a short nap on this flight, maybe 30 minutes to an hour, but that was all I really wanted for this one, as I didn't want to ruin my sleep when we eventually landed into London later on. And as the flight went on, the service from the crew started to get a bit more proactive. You know, early on they seemed a bit standoffish, they weren't the most friendly, they seemed almost bothered by passengers when there were any requests. You know, they did their job well enough, but just not really any attempt to go above and beyond. But I don't know, they might not have been unfriendly, they might just have been Finnish. But it was a bit jarring after a few business class flights around Asia where the crew have been just incredibly friendly and helpful. But in the second half of the flight, the Finnair crew did get very proactive in coming around with loads of snacks, drinks, and often really good quality snacks like a fruit bowl or a beef sandwich at one point that was really good. They weren't always great at clearing those snacks away, so once they were finished, things were just kind of sitting on my side table for quite a long time. But I was really enjoying myself. I was really comfortable in the seat, had plenty of food and drinks to keep me going, the views out the window were incredible, and I was getting pretty far through Penguin. The lunch or dinner meal service started with a bowl of nuts and a cocktail. The meal then comes with 2 small cold dishes, plus a larger hot dish. When I first looked at the menu, I was a little bit disappointed in the starter options. They weren't things I would have typically gone for, but both were really delicious. And for the hot meal, I'd ordered the chicken and the gnocchi. Again, incredibly high quality and definitely matched the impression that I'd had of Finnair's food from my previous flights. I think what I appreciate about the dining on Finnair is it does feel very Finnish, and everything feels really fresh and healthy. Okay, maybe the ice cream dessert isn't the healthiest, but by and large they do feel like they're really good quality meals. They're not the most indulgent or luxurious ones, but it's the kind of food where you feel good after eating it and you don't feel sluggish. It definitely won't be for everyone, but for me, I really like it. About an hour and a half before landing, suddenly the IFE stopped working. Of course that would happen when I was 10 minutes into the final episode of my series. I guess I'll just have to pick that up another time. But that did give me time to just reflect on my overall thoughts on the Finnair long haul experience. Now, I really love the seat, and I do think it's the biggest selling point of Finnair Business Class. For a seated position, it's really comfortable. I think for those who have mobility issues, it might be a bit more difficult getting in and out of the seat if it doesn't have the recline. But for everyone else, it does offer really great comfort and lots of space. Definitely one of the more spacious business class seats you'll see. And I think overall the one that I've found most comfortable. That said, after 12 hours on board, I did start to feel a little bit sore in places, and I was definitely ready to get out of that seat. So I was definitely looking forward to landing, getting into the lounge, trying out the sauna. So we will come on to that soon, but yeah, to be honest, I was a little bit surprised. I really thought I would be, wanting an even longer flight on it, but I guess sitting in any seat for more than 12 hours, you're going to be ready to get out of it. I think overall Finnair do a really good job of providing a comfortable product, but not necessarily one that feels too luxurious. The food is fresh and healthy, but it's not necessarily anything too premium. Same goes for what you see on the drinks menu. But I think in particular things like the really lacking amenity kit and the service from the crew just don't make you feel like a really premium airline. The crew barely cracked a smile the entire 13-hour flight. And as I said earlier, it was just particularly jarring after flying with airlines like Cathay Pacific and Korean Air and Qatar Airways recently. We'd just been fortunate enough to have a series of flights with some of the friendliest crew we'd ever had. And it just made the service on Finnair stand out even more as a bit of a negative. But can they redeem those factors on the short-haul service? We've now got a 5-hour layover in Helsinki to go enjoy the Platinum Lounge, before we eventually make our way over to London via the short-haul Finnair service. When we made our way off the plane, getting through the airport was a breeze. We just walked our way over to security, we were straight through, there was no queues at all, and we made our way straight over to the lounges. There's the Platinum Lounge, which is available for Oneworld Emerald, and then the Business Class Lounge is right next to this. We'd intended to spend all our time in the Platinum Lounge, unfortunately that didn't quite work out, but for now we were able to head straight over there. The entrance to the Platinum Lounge is to the left of the reception area, and as you walk in you're greeted immediately by the nice bar area, and the dining is over to the right of this. There's also plenty of comfortable seating options around, and although the lounge was a little bit busy when we first arrived, it very quickly cleared out, so we're pretty much just us and a few of us. After some quick refreshments I made my way over to the sauna room. The separate male and female changing rooms, and then this leads into a shared sauna space. There's a cooling room just outside the sauna that has some drinks in an ice bucket, and then you can go straight through into the sauna, which I thankfully had all to myself for the whole time I was there. A nice 15 minutes of sweating away before a really refreshing shower, after which it was time to try out some of the unique dining options available in this lounge. There is a buffet available, but I decided to order from the a la carte menu and try out the reindeer burger. Really wasn't sure what to expect from this one, but honestly found it absolutely delicious. It was really juicy and I happily ate the whole thing despite not even being that hungry. Overall, I'd highly recommend the Platinum Lounge. Unfortunately, at 5:30 PM we were booted over to the Business Class Lounge, and 5:30 PM feels like a bit of an early closing time for a lounge, but thankfully the Business Class Lounge is a really nice space, there's a great buffet available, a nice bar area and loads of different seating options. But for us, after spending so much time sat down, we just wanted to stretch our legs a bit, so we went for a walk around Helsinki airport. Really shocked to see just how quiet it was. Really didn't seem to be many flights going, which kind of makes more sense why they closed one of the lounges. So we ended up just walking up and down the airport getting our steps in. And we probably did this for about an hour until it was finally time to go and board our flight. And before this, I'd not really seen anything online about what business class is like on Finnair's A321s. Finnair do carry out a few services between Heathrow and Helsinki that are in their A330s and A350s where you get the Airlounge seat. But for us today, it was an Airbus A321, which is your standard European business class seat. That is an economy seat with the middle seat blocked out. And unfortunately, the seat here is about as basic as it comes. It's a quite thin, solid seat. There's no adjustable headrest, there's no in-seat power, all pretty bare bones really. But there was at least a good amount of space in the seat. The legroom was actually pretty decent. And it is always nice to have the seat next to you blocked out as well and just have that extra space. That said, I don't think it was an overly full flight. There did seem to be a few spaces further back that would have been available. So being in economy for this one might not have been the end of the world. But on a long travel day, it's always nice to have that guarantee of extra space. There were individual reading lights and air vents above the seat, and there was a slight recline. And I wouldn't usually recline on a flight this length, but thankfully there was no passenger behind me, so once we'd taken off I decided to just recline for pretty much the whole flight. I was definitely wiped out for this flight, no energy at all, and I was just pretty desperate to get the flight over with and get over to our hotel room and get to bed. But we did still have an in-flight service to enjoy. Starting with a hot towel and a drink, I went for the blueberry juice, which was given with some pretzels, and then the meal was brought out all on one tray and there was no dessert provided at all, so just a starter and a main. I pre-ordered the chicken option online and Kelly went for this shrimp pasta. Again, it didn't look like much, but I really commend Finnair once again on the quality of the food. Even on the short haul service, it was all really nice, tasted fresh and healthy as well. So whether you're flying in short haul or long haul, I would expect good quality, fresh and healthy food. It had been a long travel day and it left me absolutely exhausted as we landed into Heathrow and made our way over to the hotel via the autonomous pods, but it was still a travel day that I've really enjoyed. I've been in a lot of comfort for the majority of the day. I'd enjoyed some really great food both in the sky and in the lounge. I experienced something pretty unique with having a sauna in the lounge. Although Finnair isn't the most luxurious airline out there, it offers fantastic comfort and at a very reasonable price. So I would very happily fly with Finnair again, both in long haul and in short haul. If you want to see how this journey compares to my previous flight with Finnair, check out this video next. And if you want to see some examples of some more luxurious flying experiences, then go ahead and check out this playlist. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.